The groan was low, guttural, a sound Elias Vance knew intimately from a different lifetime. Not the shriek of a collapsing structure under mortar fire, but the insidious, almost imperceptible creak of stressed concrete, a whisper of impending disaster. He'd felt it in his bones for days, a phantom ache that mirrored the hairline fractures he'd been pointing out, the subtle sag in the freshly poured foundation, the shortcuts taken with the rebar grid. This wasn't just a skyscraper. This was the Liberty Tower, destined to house the nation's most sensitive data, a monument to American resilience, or so the brochures claimed. To Elias, it was a death trap in the making. "Vance, what the hell have you done?" Marcus Thorne's voice, sharp and thin as a razor wire, sliced through the sudden, eerie silence of the construction site. Elias stood, a solitary figure amidst the halted cranes and motionless steel, his hands still on the emergency override panel. Sweat, not from exertion but from a cold dread, beaded on his brow. The air, thick with the scent of wet cement and diesel, suddenly tasted like dust and impending doom. "I've saved your damn building, Thorne. And probably a few hundred lives with it." Elias's voice, a gravelly baritone honed by decades of command, cut through the project manager's bluster. Thorne, a man whose ambition outweighed his engineering degree, visibly bristled. His expensive suit, a stark contrast to Elias's grease-stained work clothes, seemed to shrink with his growing fury. "Saved it? You just cost us millions. We're on a federal contract, Vance. Every minute is budgeted. Every damn beam is accounted for. You think you can just halt operations because of a feeling?" Thorne's gaze swept over the stunned crew, then back to Elias, his face a mask of condescending rage. "You're a foreman, not a structural engineer. You're a relic, a warmonger, not a builder. Your combat stories don't apply here." The insult hung in the air, a venomous dart aimed squarely at Elias's past. He felt the familiar, slow burn of righteous anger, a flicker of the fire that had kept him alive through countless impossible situations. Relic. He ran a thumb over the tarnished silver Zippo lighter in his pocket, the cool metal a familiar anchor. "Rangers lead the way, Bravo Company 91. The engraving felt sharper than usual against his skin. This lighter, a gift from Sergeant Miller, lost in Somalia, was more than just a souvenir. It was a covenant, a silent promise to always do the right thing, no matter the cost. "There's a hairline fracture in column C7, level 3, Mr. Thorne. It's expanding. The thermal imaging picked it up, but your budget-friendly analysis team dismissed it as a calibration error." Elias spoke with the quiet authority of a man who had seen structures fail in far more spectacular ways. Give it another week, another load of concrete, and this whole damn section would have pancaked. Right into the Federal Archives vault below. Thorne scoffed, a dismissive wave of his manicured hand. "Nonsense. The independent auditors signed off. You're paranoid, Vance. Always looking for the next enemy." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, loud enough for the nearby crew to hear. "Frankly, your obsessive nature is a liability. It's a civilian job, Elias. Not a battlefield." A few of the younger crew members shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Elias's gaze. They knew his reputation, his quiet competence. But Thorne held the power. And the paycheck. "Pack your tools, Vance. You're done. Effective immediately." Thorne's voice resonated with smug finality. "Consider this a lesson in corporate discipline. We don't need heroes. We need compliance." Elias didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He simply met Thorne's gaze, a quiet, almost pitying look in his eyes that spoke volumes. The words were a dismissal, but they felt like a badge of honor. He'd made a choice. He'd saved lives. And for that, he was being cast aside. It wasn't the first time his unwavering code had clashed with the world's indifference. He nodded once, a curt, military gesture, then turned and walked away, the Zippo still clutched in his hand, its cool weight a defiant whisper against the heat of the injustice. The silence on the construction site remained, heavy and uncomfortable. The crew watched him go, a man who had commanded their respect with quiet strength, now walking into an uncertain future. Elias didn't look back. The DC skyline, a jagged silhouette against the morning haze, seemed to mock him. He had spent his life building, protecting, serving. Now, at 62, he was just another discarded piece of hardware. The next 24 hours felt like a slow, agonizing descent into irrelevance. Elias returned to his small, meticulously organized apartment, the scent of sawdust and solvent clinging to his clothes. He'd spent decades on sites like Liberty Tower, building, shoring up, always with the same unwavering focus, integrity over expediency. That was the Ranger way. That was his way. Now, that unwavering focus had cost him everything. He sat at his kitchen table, the Zippo lighter resting on the worn wood, its silver surface reflecting the muted morning light. He traced the faint lines of the engraving. Sergeant Miller. Gone too soon. Miller would have understood. He'd have been the first one to tell Thorne to shove his blueprints. The phone rang, an unfamiliar number. Elias hesitated, then answered. Mr. Elias Vance? A crisp, female voice. This is Agent Sloan, United States Secret Service. You were requested at the Department of Homeland Security. Immediately. Elias blinked. Homeland Security? Was this about the building? Had Thorne pressed charges for sabotage or insubordination? The thought was almost laughable. He, a man who had spent his life safeguarding, now a target. Requested. Elias's voice was rough. Is this an interrogation? No, sir. It is an invitation. The secretary would like to speak with you regarding the Liberty Tower incident. There was a pause, a hint of something unreadable in her tone. It's urgent. He looked down at his work boots, still caked with a fine layer of concrete dust. I'm not dressed for a federal meeting. You'll have time to change in the vehicle, Mr. Vance. A team is already en route. The line clicked dead. Elias stared at the phone, then at the Zippo. An invitation. From the Department of Homeland Security. His mind, usually a fortress of calm logic, spun with 1,000 possibilities, none of them making much sense. What in God's name is going on? Less than 15 minutes later, 2 black SUVs, windows tinted to obsidian, rolled silently to a stop outside his modest building. Agent Sloan, a woman with eyes that missed nothing and a posture that radiated quiet authority, met him at the curb. She wore a severe black suit, her expression unreadable. Flanking her were 2 other agents, their hands clasped in front, earpieces barely visible. Elias, now in a clean, but still worn, denim shirt and dark trousers, carried only his Zippo lighter, a habit he couldn't break. Inside the SUV, the leather seats were cool, the silence absolute. Elias felt like he was stepping into a different world, one far removed from the grit and sweat of construction sites. The convoy moved with practiced efficiency through the D.C. streets, traffic parting like water. No sirens, no flashing lights, just an undeniable sense of priority. He watched the city blur past, the monuments and federal buildings rising like silent sentinels. Somewhere above, he swore he heard the distant thrum of a military helicopter. Agent Sloan, Elias finally broke the silence, his voice a low rumble. Why me? Why now? She turned slightly, her gaze meeting his in the rearview mirror. The structural integrity report for Liberty Tower came in this morning, Mr. Vance. It was comprehensive. Elias waited. He knew his assessment had been accurate. He also knew Thorne would have buried it. The flaw you identified, Sloan continued, her voice devoid of emotion, was catastrophic. The entire C7 column and by extension the southeastern quadrant of the tower was compromised. Your actions prevented a complete structural collapse. A tremor ran through Elias. Pancaked. He'd used that word. He'd seen it happen. But to hear it confirmed with such clinical precision hit him harder than Thorne's insults. Below that section, Sloan added, her voice dropping slightly, is a primary data vault for the National Security Agency. And a new, unannounced daycare facility for federal employees. Your intervention, it saved more than just a building, Mr. Vance. It saved a national asset and dozens of innocent lives. Elias felt a cold wave of realization wash over him. He hadn't just seen a crack. He'd seen a potential ground zero. And he had acted. Not for praise, not for recognition, but because it was the only choice. Just like back then. Always do the right thing. The vehicle pulled up to a discreet, heavily guarded entrance of a nondescript building. Inside, the corridors were hushed, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and quiet power. He was led through a labyrinth of doors, each requiring a badge scan, until they reached a large, austere office. The walls were adorned with framed commendations and strategic maps. Behind a massive mahogany desk, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a formidable presence rose to greet him. Mr. Vance. I'm Secretary Eleanor Harding, Department of Homeland Security. Her handshake was firm, her gaze unwavering. Thank you for coming. Elias felt a surge of unease. This wasn't just a thank you. He could feel the weight of it, the unspoken implications. I understand you were let go from the Liberty Tower project, Secretary Harding began, her voice calm but with an underlying steel. Project Manager Thorne's report cited insubordination and unauthorized work stoppage. He also mentioned your unconventional methods. Elias merely nodded, his gaze steady. I saw danger, ma'am. I acted. Indeed, you did. She walked around the desk, her eyes scanning his face as if searching for something. We reviewed the independent structural analysis. Your assessment was flawless. Thorne's team, however, deliberately falsified their reports to maintain schedule and budget. They were trying to hide a grave error. The words hit Elias like a physical blow. Falsified. Deliberate. The corruption, the sheer recklessness, sickened him. He thought of Sergeant Miller, a man who would never compromise integrity for anything. Because of your actions, Mr. Vance, we averted a disaster of unimaginable scale. The loss of life, the compromise of national security, it would have been catastrophic. Harding paused, her voice softening slightly. My own grandchild was slated to start at that daycare facility next week. Elias felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't known. He hadn't needed to know. He had simply done his duty. We are not merely here to thank you, Mr. Vance, Harding continued, her voice regaining its formal tone. We are here to rectify a profound injustice. And to offer you a new path. She gestured to a large monitor on the wall which suddenly displayed a live feed of the Liberty Tower construction site. The southeastern quadrant was a hive of activity, workers meticulously dismantling the compromised column, new, reinforced steel being lowered into place. Thorne and his entire management team have been terminated, effective this morning. Federal charges are pending. Harding's eyes met his. The project is now under direct federal oversight. And we need a new lead. Elias frowned. I'm a foreman, Secretary. I'm not a federal director. You are a man of unwavering integrity, Mr. Vance, Harding countered, a faint smile touching her lips. A man who understands risk, who prioritizes lives over ledgers, and who isn't afraid to stand alone against a tide of complacency. Those are qualities we desperately need. She picked up a small, heavy box from her desk. It was made of dark, polished wood. As she opened it, a gleaming silver medal, suspended from a deep blue ribbon, caught the light. It was the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. For acts of exceptional merit, for demonstrating courage under pressure, and for placing public safety above all personal cost, Harding read from a document on her desk, her voice resonating with gravitas. It is my distinct honor to present the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Elias Vance. Elias stood, his legs feeling strangely weak. He'd seen plenty of medals in his life, some worn by heroes, some by men who simply survived. But this felt different. This was for a different kind of battle, a different kind of courage. I don't deserve this, ma'am, he stammered, his voice hoarse. Yes, Mr. Vance, Harding said, stepping forward to place the ribbon around his neck, the heavy metal settling against his chest. You absolutely do. This isn't just for saving a building. It's for reminding us all what true service looks like, even when no one is watching. The weight of the metal was surprising, cool against his skin. It felt like a mirror to the Zippo in his pocket, 2 different eras, 2 different wars, but the same underlying principle. Furthermore, Harding continued, her voice now amplified by a hidden microphone as he suddenly realized the room was full of silent, watchful figures, military brass, intelligence officials, even a few journalists. Effective immediately, Mr. Elias Vance has been appointed the Director of Critical Infrastructure Safety for the Department of Homeland Security. You will oversee all federal construction and infrastructure projects, ensuring they meet the highest standards of safety and integrity. You will build a team, Mr. Vance. A team of men and women who share your unwavering commitment to doing what is right. The room erupted in applause, a wave of sound that momentarily disoriented Elias. He was no longer just a fired foreman. He was a federal director. He was being given a chance to reshape the very system that had tried to break him. Weeks later, the whispers still followed Elias. Not the loud, public ones of praise and admiration, but the insidious, quiet murmurs from the construction industry, from former colleagues who resented his sudden rise. Lucky break, they'd say. Old man got sentimental, stumbled into a gold mine. He saw the articles online, the forums dissecting his past, questioning his motives. Asterisk, he was just a foreman. What does a grunt know about high-level engineering? Asterisk, it stung. Not because he craved validation, but because it undermined the very principle he lived by, integrity. He hadn't sought glory. He'd simply done his job. Yet, in the hushed, sterile halls of the Department of Homeland Security, Elias Vance found a new purpose. His office, once an empty shell, now buzzed with activity. He wasn't just reviewing blueprints, he was building a new standard. He spent hours interviewing engineers, architects, and foremen, searching not just for technical skill, but for that intangible quality he valued above all else, character. His favorite part of the new role, however, wasn't the high-level briefings or the strategic planning. It was the mentorship program he'd quietly launched, the Rangers Code Initiative. It was designed for veterans transitioning into civilian construction and infrastructure roles, teaching them not just the trade, but the ethics, the unwavering commitment to safety and quality that had been lost in the pursuit of profit. One afternoon, a young Marine Corps veteran named Carla Ramirez sat across from him. Her eyes, shadowed by a recent deployment, held a familiar weariness. She was struggling to adapt, feeling the disconnect between the clear-cut rules of combat and the murky ethics of the civilian world. "They say it's different out here, Sergeant Major," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "That you gotta play the game. Cut corners to get ahead." Elias reached into his pocket, pulling out the Zippo. He clicked it open, the familiar metallic snap echoing in the quiet office. "They're wrong, Marine," he said, his gaze fixed on the lighter. "The principles don't change. Just the battlefield." He pushed the Zippo across the desk. "This belonged to a good man. Taught me more about building than any textbook ever could." Carla picked up the lighter, her fingers tracing the engraving. "Rangers lead the way. Integrity, discipline, courage," Elias murmured. "Doesn't matter if you're building a bridge or holding a line. You do it right or you don't do it at all." He watched as a spark of recognition, a flicker of renewed purpose, ignited in her eyes. It was moments like these that truly defined his new life, far more than any medal or title. Months later, the sun beat down on the newly completed Liberty Tower. Its glass facade shimmered, a beacon of progress in the heart of D.C. Today wasn't just about celebrating the building, it was about celebrating the man who saved it. A public dedication ceremony, attended by dignitaries, press, and hundreds of construction workers, filled the plaza. Elias, now dressed in a sharp, custom-tailored suit that still felt alien on his frame, stood on the stage beside Secretary Harding. The Presidential Medal of Freedom gleamed on his chest. He still felt the whispers, the subtle glances, but they were distant like background noise. His focus was on the young veterans in the front rows, members of his Rangers Code initiative, their faces eager, hopeful. Carla Ramirez was among them, her posture straighter, her eyes brighter. Secretary Harding approached the podium, her voice clear and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we dedicate not just a building, but a principle. The principle that integrity matters. That quiet courage can avert catastrophe. And that true heroes often work in the shadows, asking for nothing but to do what is right." She paused, then turned to Elias. "Mr. Vance, your actions that day were extraordinary. But your continued dedication, your commitment to shaping the next generation of principled builders, that is the true legacy." Then, a surprise. A figure stepped forward from the VIP section, a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and a kind, but serious, face. He was General Thomas Harding, the Secretary's husband, a retired four-star general, a man rarely seen in public. He walked directly to Elias, his gaze locking onto his. "Sergeant Major," General Harding said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying across the plaza. "I heard you were a Ranger. Bravo Company, 91. Elias felt a jolt. "Yes, sir." General Harding reached into his own pocket and pulled out a Zippo lighter. It was identical to Elias's, save for the pristine polish. "My son, Lieutenant Harding. He served with Bravo Company. 91, he carried one of these." His voice cracked slightly. "Lost him in Somalia. Ambushed. He was a good man." Elias's breath hitched. "Sergeant Miller. Lieutenant Harding." The pieces clicked into place. The son of the secretary, the one who would have been in the daycare. The general's son. A fallen Ranger. He was, Elias managed, his voice thick with emotion. "He was one of the best, sir." General Harding nodded, his eyes moist. "He always spoke of a Sergeant Vance. Said you were the toughest, most principled man he knew. Said you'd always do what was right, no matter the cost." He looked at the crowd, then back at Elias, a profound gratitude etched on his face. "You saved my grandchild, Sergeant Major. You saved my daughter-in-law. You saved a part of my son's legacy. And you did it with the same quiet integrity he always admired in you." He extended his hand, the Zippo still clutched in his palm. "Thank you, Elias. For everything." Elias grasped the general's hand, a silent understanding passing between them. The Zippo in his own pocket suddenly felt lighter, yet infinitely more meaningful. The whispers of doubt, the resentment, the accusations of luck, they all vanished, replaced by the profound weight of a shared history, a shared code. The applause that followed was deafening, a wave of genuine emotion washing over the plaza. It wasn't for a medal, or a title, or a building. It was for a man who, in the quiet integrity of his actions, had honored a legacy far greater than himself. Elias stood tall, the DC skyline now a symbol of hope, not mockery. He was no longer just a foreman. He was a guardian. And he was finally home.